Yeah.
All right. So let's do this.
You're in charge, huh?
Yeah, and the second and thirds and all the rest of the stuff. All right, let's get our agenda. Let me get my phone.
Through the system, though, like through a web portal, not even I'm emailing you the documents.
Right now, we're just doing it.
Okay. All right, everyone, let's call the January 15th meeting, Santa Clara Valley Habitat Agency Governing and Implementation Boards together. We have Kat Tucker, the governing chair, is out sick. Peter Leroy Munoz, her alternate, is also ill. And we have Councilman Roland Velasco, the alternate, sitting in with us today. Welcome, Roland. And we'll start the meeting. We don't have a quorum until Rose Herrera gets here from San Jose. We understand she's en route. She's the only other person that we expect, which will give us a quorum for both boards?
Both boards, yes.
For both boards, which will be great. So we can take non-action items. And Valerie, it's a new year. Why don't you just start us off on the end with introductions, going around once. You're starting with yourself.
Certainly. I'm Valerie Armento, the General Counsel of the Habitat Agency.
Edmund Sullivan.
You're not on.
Edmund Sullivan, Executive Officer, Habitat Agency.
Jason Rogers, Division Manager for Environmental Review and Development Review for the City of San Jose. And member of the Implementation Board.
Andrew Crabtree, I'm Community Development Director for Morgan Hill and the Implementation Board alternate.
Mike Wasserman, Santa Clara County Supervisor, District 1, Implementation Governing Board.
Steve Tate, Mayor of Morgan Hill, Governing Board only.
Roland Velasco, City of Gilroy, Governing and Implementation Board alternate.
Linda Lazat, Implementation Board, Santa Clara Valley Water District.
Tom Fitzwater, Environmental Programs and Resource Management Manager for VTA and Implementation Board member.
County Supervisor Joe Simitian, member of the Governing Board. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And on the on your agendas, item 1 will take action, so we'll defer that one. Item 2, mid-year budget review briefing. I'm going to. Yeah, we can, that's just accepting a report, recommended action, so we can do that.
Great.
And Edward, I think that's you.
Yes, thank you. So just part of the requirement of the agency is sort of to go through a mid-year budget review, which is standard practice with a lot of public agencies. And this briefing is just sort of to inform the governing board action and to sort of let the implementation board aware of where we are with the budget. So the revenues to date are $2,773,264. The revenue sources are noted in the staff report. They come from land cover fees, wetland fees, nitrogen, burrowing owl, and serpentine. To date, we haven't collected any serpentine fees, but we anticipate that we'll collect $1 million in serpentine fees by the end of the year. Page 14 of your packet goes over sort of the projected revenues and anticipated revenues, and I'll go through all these line by line. So the land cover fees were projected in June of last year to be around $6 million. We anticipate them to be $3.7 million. That's based on development activity that we anticipate. So we've collected over $2 million in land cover fees to date. We expect to collect another 1.7, primarily from the City of San Jose, with some projects, Communication Hill project, the Arcadia project, and a couple smaller projects. We won't be reaching the 6 million threshold because there's been less development activity than originally anticipated, or at least less than will be permitted by the end of this fiscal year. Part of the 6 has been spliced off into the 1 for Serpentine. The budget didn't project Serpentine in June, but we anticipate collecting roughly $1 million in Serpentine fees, again primarily from the city of San Jose. The Burrowing Owl, that was primarily, I think, that there was going to be more development going on in the Burrowing Owl Conservation Zone in the city of San Jose. We're anticipating that we'll collect about $2 million overall. We've collected almost $400,000 from Morgan Hill, which was given to the agency due to mitigation that happened prior to plan implementation and us getting the permit. We also will be collecting close to $600,000 from the water agency, and that also is pre-planned mitigation that's being channeled to the agency. The other $1 million we project will be coming from projects from the city of San Jose. Nitrogen deposition, we projected it to be about $275,000 for the year. It might end up being more than that with a side conversation I just had with Jason. It might be double that, which is good news. So it might be closer to 500 than the 275 I have here. Wetland impacts, there hasn't been a lot of wetland impacts to date, and we don't expect much more in the way of wetland impacts. So we're anticipating only about 100,000. Participating special entities are primarily from 2 projects, the Ferguson Road project for Caltrans and a small PG&E project, and we anticipate it to be about 175. In June, they projected it to be 310. The grant funds need to explain a little bit why there's that discrepancy. The $2 million was the anticipated Section 6 grant for Coyote Ridge, the UTC Coyote Ridge property. OSA applied for those funds, but without the plan, they would have never been able to get those funds. But we can't put those in our budget because they're not funds that will ever come to the agency. The land that will eventually be enrolled will be part of the reserve system, so Coyote Ridge, but to put that in as a revenue for the agency, we can't, but we can definitely credit the land. But we could have a little asterisk there. Without the plan, OSA would not have gotten the $2 million. We have gotten an $85,000, it should be $85,135 grant from the state. It's one of the items on the agenda today, the local assistance grant, and that's to study grazing within the county, South County area. So anticipated revenues will be $7,335,000. That's sort of what we anticipate them to be, and they were projected in June to be $14,385,000. Expenditures to date are $677,173. There will be no anticipated capital expenditures, which were projected to be $11,220,153. I'm assuming that when the budget was put together at that time frame, they were thinking of capital expenditures as acquiring land. Land is a capital asset, and it will be dealt with once we get our financial accounting system in place as a separate ledger budget line, and it'll show up in revenues, and it'll show up as a capital asset. It wouldn't be a capital expenditure. The kind of capital expenditures we anticipate having would, if we bought a truck, or if we buy other equipment, if we construct a restoration project, let's say we do a stream restoration project or a wetland restoration, we could classify those as capital expenditures. Or if we build a bridge reserve system land. Those are the kind of things that we would anticipate being capital expenditures, and we don't anticipate any of those expenditures in this fiscal year. Anticipated expenses were approximately $1.7 million. Will be $1.7 million, which is $520,000 less than the budgeted amount of $2,221,440. Thank you.
Thank you, and we welcome Councilmember Herrera here. We now have a quorum for both boards, and I just want to jump back. I erred, and I did not invite anyone. Vice Mayor Herrera. Thank you. Congratulations on that. You say congratulations, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Of course you do.
All right. I need to jump back to before starting and invite anyone from the public who wishes to speak about anything not on today's agenda. Not seeing anyone. And Doug, you were on 12? Yeah. Okay. Now we can go. Did you have a question? No. Now we can go back to item number 1, which is approval of the minutes. Yes.
I had a question.
Please. Member Lazat.
I'm curious about how the $2 million in grant funds wound up on the budget. If it was it just a sort of a taking credit for the land and not really the money? How is that? That's a big.
Yes.
Is that just an interpretation, or what is
Yes, it was an interpretation that happened before my tenure here, so I can't shed any light on it other than I would assume your sort of explanation would be the explanation that I would give, that somehow they wanted to note that the land was going to be acquired, but given that the OSA applied for the grant, it's kind of a tricky thing to put it in our revenue stream.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But it shows up though as land.
Yes, it will. Once the land is enrolled, so most of that 1,881 acres of that UTC Coyote Ridge property will be enrolled in the reserve system. And it scored so high on the Section 6 grant because it represents a significant critical habitat unit for the butterfly. So without acquiring that property or enrolling it in the land or the reserve system, the plan would, at least for the butterfly, would be difficult to sort of achieve its goals and objectives. So from a land standpoint, it's probably one of the most important properties we need to acquire. But from a financial accounting standpoint, yeah, we can't put that amount of money in the budget. But the land will get credited and it'll be part of the reserve system. And we're already talking to OSA about how we're going to enroll that property. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So another question. So going forward, I'm also curious about the city of San Jose and the fees that we were expecting from development. I can't see Jim. Was it really unanticipated going forward? Is there a way for us to be a little more conservative in what we think? Because I was a San Jose City Council member. You can tell when projects are or aren't going to happen. Mm-hmm. So I think that the closer coordination maybe going forward is something that I would be asking you to do to make sure that if we put it in the budget, it's really something that's going to come down the pipe. I mean, things happen. I know that.
Absolutely. And I have a good working relationship with Jason and John Davison, so I'll make sure that happens.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Jason, sorry.
Thank you, and I'd like to, excuse me just one second, Jason. I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Walt Glein here from our advisory commission. Thank you. Thank you. Jason.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for,
thank you, Chair.
I have a question just for Edmund. Looking at, obviously, as you've kind of started to fine-tune some of these numbers about your total budget revenues projected and what you're expected to come in, do you foresee there being any long-term impact with this adjustment? Because obviously, you know, it's a hefty adjustment from 14 down to 7, and even though you've been extremely conservative how you've been able to expend some of those funds that you have, but as we all know, development, is dictated by the market. So if things don't come as you have already adjusted, are you, or do you have something in prepared to be able to keep yourselves up and running?
Yes, one of the things we're going to be doing over the next year is developing financial policies for the agency, and part of that will be to creation of a sort of a rainy day fund. So certain monies will be set aside to keep the operations going. Right now, the only thing it would really affect would be our ability, if a landowner came in today and said, I want to sell my land to you, 14 million is a lot more than 7.5. So it definitely affects our ability to buy land. But it also is an opportunity because, as I'll mention in my executive officer report, we need to build partnerships with OSA, parks, the Nature Conservancy, Post, and others to work together to acquire these lands. And that's something that was always envisioned by this agency anyways, to work in partnership. So we might have to rely more on these organizations. And with OSA's measure being passed, that gives them the financial capacity to potentially help us out. We may have to borrow some money from the Nature Conservancy or Post, and they've offered in the past, at least just sort of informally, that they would loan us money to buy land and we could pay them back with fees over time. So the day-to-day operations are okay because I'm the only staff person, and we have Jill, of course, too. So we
14 million?
No, I wish I did.
Organizations that you're mentioning all have land acquisition in their mission statement.
Correct.
And that's why they're all looking to partner and make our mission successful. If we don't have the money to acquire the land, that's an interesting problem. But at the end of the day, the acquisition of land, all the groups that you're mentioning, it's what they want to do as well. So it's in their interest to see us succeed.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Jason, I didn't mean to cut you off. You got your question answered and you're squared away. All right, so now we'll go back to item number 1. Don't see any other questions. To approve the minutes of the prior meeting, which was September 18th. Do I have a motion to do so, Jason?
So moved.
Motion by Supervisor Smidian.
Second.
And second, thank you, Member Lazat.
I will be abstaining given I was not here at the meeting and do not feel comfortable being able to vote on the items that were discussed.
All right. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. That passes unanimously. Are you okay picking up who we've got here? And you are? Okay. With Jason abstaining. That was 1. We now jump on to number 3, the Burrowing Owl Survey Summary and FEMAP Briefing.
And
Yes.
do you want to move up item 16 to number 3?
Yes, I think that would be an excellent idea. Thank you very much, Edmund. Item 16, members, was to review the change in the Burrowing Owl impact fees, and what Edmund's talking about there, and I appreciate your being agreeable to do that, is the discussion of that I thought should take place before action takes place. Go figure.
Yes,
Let's discuss it before we vote on approving it. So we're moving number 16 up to go along with number 3 as far as I'm concerned.
I think it was a good suggestion.
And Valerie, as far as any motion, it's number 16 is simply review a change. There is no action. Okay, and so we don't need to hear 16 later or separate votes. Thank you. Okay, so we're hearing 16 and 3 together. Please go ahead, Edmund.
So I'll do 16 first, and then Troy can give you the presentation on both the map changes and give you a little background on an item that's on the implementation board agenda. I think it's item number 17. So let me get my glasses on. You won't see me with these too much. So the Habitat Agency imposes a burrowing owl conservation fee on covered activities that occur in occupied burrowing owl habitat. Occupied burrowing owl habitat is based on documented nest occurrences, locations which change year to year. To determine where burrowing owls are nesting each year, the agency coordinates a county-wide burrowing owl survey during the nesting season. The 2014 survey results were combined with the 2012 and 2013 nest surveys to inform what is occupied burrowing owl habitat. So how the map changed. There are 4,023 acres of land subject to the fee. One new burrowing owl location was added to the fee map. The 4,023 acres subject to the fee is a decrease from the 6,076 portrayed in the original map. So you may ask, why the decrease? Burrowing owls have not been documented at several of the sites where they were previously found in the last 3 survey seasons. Therefore, those areas have been dropped from the map. So though we added one new location, the amount of acreage decreased by over 2,000 acres. So there less properties are now impacted by the fee overall. Any questions?
None. You mentioned 17 as well.
Oh yeah. Troy's presentation is going to address, give you a little background on item 17. I think it's item 17. Is that the SFBBO? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And board members, the reason I brought this up is item number 9 on our agenda is the adoption of a resolution, adopting a law, changing a law. And items 3, 16, and 17 were discussing that topic. So what was my intent was to have 3, 16, and 17 all being aired out now. If anyone from the public wishes to speak on any of these 3 items, please let me know. Have those all aired out before we get down to number 9. And Valerie, 16 and 17 were receiving presentations, as was 3. So I don't think it matters if it's implementation board members voting or governing, because there's nothing to vote on.
Correct, that's not a problem.
Thank you.
And 17 is an action item of the implementation board. So,
Becoming one of my favorite attorneys.
sorry, 17 is an action item. It's approving an agreement with SFBBO.
Oh, okay, then we will we'll culminate with 17.
Yes, yes.
Okay. But for now, we're doing 3 and 16. Okay, any other questions on 3 and 16? And we have a speaker card. It's Shawnee? Of course it's Shawnee. How are you? Happy New Year. Did you wish to speak on 3 or 16 right now, or were you waiting for 17 or 9?
So I think it might be helpful if we did the presentation by the consultant first.
Let's do it.
Okay, thanks everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Troy Ramick. I'm with ICF International, and I know some of you have been working on the habitat plan for a number of years, and one of the things that I've been working on during that entire time is burrowing owls and burrowing owl issues as they relate to the plan. So today, Edmund mentioned that we have completed our first annual survey or not completed, but coordinated our first annual survey for burrowing owls in the county. And so what I wanted to do today, excuse me, was just give you a quick overview of the burrowing owl conservation strategy. If you know anything about it, you know that it's probably one of the most complex parts of the plan. And so I'm just going to give you a slide or two, kind of hit the high points overview for those of you who are not familiar or want a refresher. Give you an update on the coordinated survey effort that we did this year. And all of that will then culminate in me showing you what the new fee map is for burrowing owls, and that's what you'll be looking at later in the meeting. And then after that, I'm going to give you just a quick overview of the management and monitoring that's currently going on and it's going to continue at Don Edwards National Wildlife Refuge. That's the work that the San Francisco Bay Bird Observatory and the refuge are going to do as part of a management agreement with the Habitat Agency if you approve that action today. So I'll just give you an overview of that as well. So to begin, and maybe just as a quick overview, thinking about burrowing owls in the county and the way that we sort of assess them in our planning effort as part of the habitat plan, we initially divided up burrowing owl habitat into 3 different habitat types, and they're shown here in a couple of different colors. The one that is of most interest and that we're really focusing on here today is what we termed occupied burrowing owl habitat. And so that was a new term that we defined in the plan, and essentially what it means is any known nesting occurrence plus a half-mile buffer around that occurrence to accommodate foraging habitat. And we track that on 3-year increments. So if we have a known nesting occurrence within the past 3 years in an area, we take that plus a half-mile buffer and we call it occupied burrowing owl habitat. That is the area that the burrowing owl fee is assessed on. So if a covered activity occurs within that occupied burrowing owl habitat, the burrowing owl conservation fee is assessed. There are other types of burrowing owl habitat. There's potential burrowing owl habitat, habitats that meet the habitat characteristics and types that owls use, but there just aren't any nesting owls there that we know of. And then there's overwintering habitat, which is a little bit more up in the foothills, areas where we haven't had owls nesting historically. It doesn't mean that they couldn't at some point in the future, but they definitely use those habitats during the winter months. And one of the challenges we had when we were working on the burrowing owl conservation strategy was that actually most of the best established burrowing owl colonies in the county fell outside of our habitat plan study area. So they're up in North San Jose, but then also up in Santa Clara and Mountain View and up there to the east in Fremont. And so we were forced with this issue where we were trying to manage for a species that only a small portion of the population actually occurred in the population. So we created this expanded burrowing owl conservation area. And on my screen it's purple, you may not be able to see it, but it basically extends all the way up around the southern edge of the bay there. So basically it goes Palo Alto all the way around to Fremont. Now, nothing is really happening in that area. No activities are covered. Those cities and jurisdictions aren't part of the habitat plan, but that's an area that we wanted to be able to focus conservation efforts in. And so we included that formally as part of the plan so that we could do conservation up there. It's the only covered species where we can do conservation actions outside of our permit area, our study area. So just some key highlights of this strategy itself. One of the things we wanted to do, and this sounds kind of silly, but we wanted to protect and manage owls where they are, right? So we only have burrowing owls in a few places, and we wanted to focus on protecting and managing those places first, knowing that we would like to get owls moving around and spread the population out and have owls in new locations in the future, but we weren't going to worry about protecting those areas quite yet until we could stabilize the existing population. We wanted to increase survival rates at the colonies so we could get enough owls that they could hopefully naturally move to new locations, so they wouldn't be as vulnerable to issues that might occur to those populations over time. We are funding management activities on sites that are occupied. So as part of the boosting population numbers, we wanted to go and look at those areas that have owls and say, what could we do management-wise that could make it even better for owls? And you'll hear about that later on in the presentation. And we wanted to get kind of a new baseline of where burrowing owls are. So a lot of agencies, and I'll talk about several of them in a few minutes here, but a lot of agencies and organizations in the South Bay survey for burrowing owls for various reasons, and they have been for a number of years. So we have a pretty good handle on the burrowing owl population in the county, but there's a lot of places that don't get surveyed because it's private land or just there's no reason to do it. So we wanted to really, as part of this planning effort, during implementation, set a new baseline for where burrowing owls are located. And we knew that in order to pull any of this off, we would have to coordinate with other local jurisdictions and South Bay governments, those cities that I mentioned that are not part of the habitat plan, but that have owls in their jurisdictions. And then all of the other organizations, Santa Clara Bay Audubon Society, the San Francisco Bay Bird Observatory, Moffett Airfield, and on. So as part of that effort, we have some formal things in the plan that we have to do. We say we'll conduct at least 2 meetings a year, one before the breeding season starts and one at the end, to have some formal coordination with those groups and to assist us in coordinating this annual survey effort. And then there are several pilot studies. There are a lot of things we don't know about burrowing owls in the area, which is a little surprising, but we want to initiate some research activities, research projects around that. And some of that's already getting started, even sort of outside of the habitat plan, so that we can just learn more about what really is suppressing the population, so we can, kind of create some management plans that may be able to fix that. So this year was the first full year of implementation in that, burrowing owls start nesting around March, sometimes a little earlier, and they nest all the way through the spring and summer into August sometimes. So this was the first full year where we could really get ahead of it. And as part of the coordination of the survey effort, we sort of coined the term the South Bay Burrowing Owl Survey Network. As I mentioned, there are lots of groups that are already surveying for burrowing owls every year for various reasons, and this is a list of them there. The Habitat Agency, with the support of ICF, we coordinated that effort, had our initial meeting in March, and just basically said, we know you're already surveying for burrowing owls on your properties for whatever reason. Will you share your data with us and collect data, in a somewhat systematic way? This year was kind of the first run at that, so we weren't trying to lay down the law and make sure that everybody was doing things exactly the way we wanted them to do, but we were really just trying to make sure that people were talking and coordinating, and that data was getting shared. So this is what the kind of coverage map looked like. So we designated all these survey blocks and divided them up amongst those organizations that I just showed you. As I said, some of them were already surveying certain blocks already, and then the ICF team and the Audubon Society and others kind of picked up those that weren't being surveyed by anybody else. The blocks in yellow are those that fall inside of our study area, and those in black are outside of our study area. And then the pinkish color is just the kind of existing areas historically where we've known about owls. So, and as a result of that, these are the numbers. So we came up with the first annual report, so the South Bay Burrowing Owl Nesting Report. We'll be producing that report every year. So at the end of every breeding season, this group will come together, bring the data together, and we'll put a report out that then will culminate in possible changes to a map on an annual basis, and maybe not. But these are the numbers. Interestingly, the numbers of adults are a little bit higher than they have been in the last few years. We haven't had a really thorough kind of county-wide survey effort like this since about 2006, and maybe 2008 also we did some additional survey work for the habitat plan. But this is the first time that we really, in a coordinated way, had people out looking, and had people out looking in places where we might not have been looking before. So we ended up with 107 adults, about 51 nesting pair, give or take. When we look at how that ranks or lines up with the expectations of the habitat plan, so this is a figure from the habitat plan that basically, we put this together back in 2008, I think, and so back then we were thinking we started with about a population of around 70 adults that the Habitat Agency would be contributing towards or responsible for. And then as it goes over the 50-year permit term, that number is going to, it's not going to go up like that. This is clearly just a cartoonish depiction of that. But the idea is that eventually we're going to get up to, somewhere around 220 pair. So right now, if you think about where are we now, that's about where we are. Now, that doesn't mean that we went from 70 owls to 107 owls. What really that means is that, like a lot of other things in the habitat plan, we did all of that back in 2006, 7, and 8. We were looking at numbers as they were back then, and now it's 2014, 6 years later. So there's going to be some natural growth in the population, so I don't want you to think that it just exploded this year for any particular reason. It probably happened over time. So why the increase? More comprehensive survey effort is one thing. We didn't really have anything earth-shattering. We didn't have owls popping up in a lot of new places or anything like that. We basically found owls where we historically have had owls, and we didn't find owls where we didn't have owls. So there's nothing really earth-shattering come out like that. But two things that are happening that I think added to the numbers. One is the restoration efforts happening at the San Jose Santa Clara water pollution control plant, work being done by the city of San Jose and the Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society. There have been owls on the buffer lands at the plant in the past, but in the last few years there have been some directed efforts on part of that property to make it better for owls. And that's working. So the numbers have increased. And similarly at Don Edwards National Wildlife Refuge, they've begun doing a little bit of work out there, and the Habitat Agency hopefully will be assisting them in the future, and I'll talk to you more about that. But in a similar way, they've just had a little bit more directed efforts at some grassland restoration and burrowing owl habitat enhancement efforts. So the distribution of occupied burrowing owl habitat. So after we did the surveys, we then went back to the original question: where are the owls? And if we add a half-mile buffer around those nest occurrences, that becomes our new occupied burrowing owl habitat. And that's what it looks like for the entire sort of North San Jose, well, really Santa Clara County, because we didn't find any owls south. So you can see that a lot of it, most of it, is still in other jurisdictions outside of this, out of the habitat plan study area. There certainly are still, you can see, I don't know if you can see my mouse here. This big blob here is the San Jose Airport and adjacent lands, so there's still a big population at the airport. And then as you sort of bubble that half mile out, that picks up some other lands, and there are some owls in other places just off airport. And then this area up here, this is the water pollution control plant that I mentioned. We have some owls over here by Levi Stadium and on adjacent lands. And then as we go south, we have, this is just adjacent to the, is it Arcadia or Acadia? I can never remember that property. Meadow Fair Park.
It's Arcadia.
Arcadia, sorry. Meadow Fair Park. And there have been owls there for years. Or an owl or a pair of owls, not a lot of owls. And then the new location that Ed mentioned was down here on near Communication Hill, on Dairy Hill. These are owls that were nesting owls there last year in 2013. We surveyed that area this year, and there weren't owls there this year, but as part of that rolling three-year window, they get picked up in the habitat layer. So that's what it looks like for the entire kind of distribution of the owls. And then if we just cut that, to our study area, this is effectively the new burrowing owl fee map. So this is the areas that are subject, where covered activities would be subject to the burrowing owl conservation fee. Not a lot of new there. Ed mentioned that the acreage actually went down a couple thousand acres, which sounds like a lot. One thing I'll point out about that is that the original occupied burrowing owl habitat, it wasn't based on a 3-year window by any means. It was based on all occurrences of burrowing owls that we had at the time, and that was up through about 2008. So we were including occurrences in that layer that weren't just from 2006, 7, and 8. They actually were any owls that had been seen nesting in the area. So we looked at the California Natural Diversity Database and collected other information from other local experts, and we applied the half-mile buffer to those. And so you ended up with, the culmination of that was just, a much bigger area than we actually probably had owls in. And so now the whittling down of that is probably just the new baseline. It's probably not anything, nothing really actually happening out there on the land with the habitat. It's just like this is the reality of where we are today rather than where we were probably 6 years ago. It's one thing that we often forget, that a lot of the data that we look at in the habitat plan was developed in 2006 through 2008. And I was part of that effort, and so now it's 2014, and so we have to reset our expectations sometimes. So that's kind of where we are this year. That was the 2014 survey. As I mentioned, as it's a requirement in the habitat plan that we do this every year. So we're already getting ready to plan the meeting for March to get the group back together and get going on 2015 surveys. We'll do a similar summary of results at the end of the year next year, and then be back in front of you again, probably this time again next year, with potentially a change in the map or not, depending on what we find. So the next thing I was going to do was move on to the work that's going on at Don Edwards, but maybe I could just, if it's okay, just pause for questions on that. Yes.
The Arcadia site, is that where there are burrowing owls there? That's burrowing owl habitat, or what? How is that defined?
There are burrowing owls at Meadow Fair Park, which is just adjacent to that site, and on the site itself. And the site is considered burrowing owl habitat, and it has been, for a number of years. So when you buffer the occurrences with the half mile and create the occupied habitat, in other words, the owls may be at the park, but they're certainly using the Arcadia site for foraging. So if that site, gets developed eventually one day, I would not be surprised if those owls, cease to be there anymore, just because there probably won't be any place for them to forage.
How many pair, or how many exactly have we seen on that site?
Just one pair this year, and over the last number of years, actually, Shawnee may have a better answer than this. There's always been about one pair, never more than a couple, that, to my knowledge, historically. So it's just, a kind of a remnant nesting pair there.
So that site happens to be in my council district, and there is development moving forward on that.
Right.
And I guess I just wanted to ask the director, is that one of the projects that we're looking at fees, or is that included in our projections?
Yes.
Is that some of the things that we thought were going to come in sooner that didn't come in, or?
I think what was originally assumed is that more of that site was going to be developed. In my conversations with the city, they only think about 10 or 15 acres of that site will be developed. At least they'll start grading and construction before the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah, because the site is going to be fully developed, but it's going to happen over a long period of time. So I think that's maybe some of what we're seeing, maybe some of these other projects, there's phasing going on.
I think so.
Okay, that's
Communication
helpful.
Hill, I met with KB Homes, and there's
That's
phasing
helpful. So
phasing going with that too. Yeah.
Okay. I know there was another question about on the owls. I'll think of it in a minute. Thank you.
Thank you. Please continue.
Okay. So one of the sort of cornerstones of the burrowing owl conservation strategy is, we would love, like all of the other covered species, we would love to be able to say, let's go out and buy lots of habitat for burrowing owls. But the reality is there isn't a lot of habitat available, for at least where there are currently burrowing owls nesting. And one of the challenges we have, there are two challenges. One is that most of that area currently, as you saw by the map, is in kind of North San Jose and on up the peninsula, in places where it's per acre some of the most expensive real estate in the country. So if you think about how far would your conservation dollar go, not very far. The other thing is that a lot of the places where burrowing owls are currently nesting, it's on some type of public land, federal land, airports, and so on. And so it's not like we're going to be able to go in and buy land or get a conservation easement on San Jose International Airport, for example. So what we did in the burrowing owl conservation strategy was came up with kind of a unique thing where we allow the agency to enter into management agreements with public agencies or other landowners or whatever, where the land isn't put into long-term in perpetuity protection, but we enter into kind of a contract with them for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. There's no set time frame. It could be flexible. And effectively what that means is that they agree to manage their property as burrowing owl habitat for a set amount of time, 5 years or whatever. And the reason behind that was we wanted to find ways that we could initially engage in burrowing owl conservation in the first 10 years, say, of the habitat plan implementation, and find a way to boost burrowing owl numbers to a point where the population was healthy enough that it could start naturally distributing into other habitats. So anyway, that's a kind of a long-winded way of saying that one of the primary charges of the agency at this point in time with burrowing owls is to look for opportunities for these management agreements. And we're actively having conversations with lots of different jurisdictions about that. The first one to come up is an opportunity that we have at Don Edwards National Wildlife Refuge, where their Warm Springs unit, just skip through this here for a second. So actually, let me back up. Sorry.
I remember my question.
Their worms. Do you want to ask it now, or I can wait till the end?
It relates to what you're just going to talk about. So, and maybe I missed it. What gives us authorization to go beyond the habitat plan to work with conserving burrowing owls that are outside of? What's the foundational law or whatever that allows us to go beyond that and help with conservation that's outside of our area?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Yeah, really good question. So the one important thing that I'll start with is to say that in that expanded, and I'll show you here with my mouse hopefully, that expanded burrowing owl area, that purple area on the map, which goes into these other jurisdictions, the only thing that we can do there is burrowing owl conservation. So it's a very finite thing that can happen there. No other covered activities or anything will happen out there. No other conservation for other species. The only thing that allows us to do that is simply that in the habitat plan, in the burrowing owl conservation strategy, we recognize the fact that it's really put forward as a regional recovery strategy for burrowing owls, kind of a South Bay recovery strategy for the species. And in order for us to be successful in the Santa Clara Valley Habitat Plan study area, we're going to have to make sure that these other burrowing owl populations remain healthy. So,
excuse me, Troy, if
yes.
I may, because I think I understand the question a little differently. The developers outside of the plan area that have burrowing owls could go to the federal and state governments directly and not go through our habitat plan. We're an option for them. So do we have legal jurisdiction? Do they have to go through us? No. People inside our plan area? Yes.
Okay.
Outside, but we're an alternative for them.
Okay.
Yep, that's absolutely correct. Yep, and it's merely it's not the burrowing owl. It's an important point. Is not a state or federal listed species, so it's merely a CEQA issue in those cases. So they deal with burrowing owl through their CEQA documentation. So yeah, it would be an option to use the Habitat Agency as a mitigation avenue.
And one thing I'd like to add, we commented on the city place development in the city of Santa Clara. We wrote a letter. Some of the environmental groups did, the state did, saying that you're impacting burrowing owls and you can mitigate your impacts through the plan. We also commented on nitrogen.
So that gives us an opportunity then to increase revenue to purchase more land too. Is that an opportunity?
Absolutely.
Saw that
And
as an
again,
opportunity,
I
that's
mean,
our
our
jurisdiction.
mission was a win-win for environmentalists and developers working together. So that's an option for them. Or they can say no to us and they can take their chances with the federal and state government.
And is this the only, why is this the only species then? So we mentioned other species in the plan, didn't we, besides burrowing owls?
Oh yeah.
The only species where we are going to be doing this kind of process with?
It's the only species where we expanded our study area for this reason. That's right. So all of the other covered species in the plan, the conservation will be happening inside of the study area here.
And is that because we have those species occur
That's right.
naturally in there? This is the one where
That's
they
correct.
don't? Okay,
Yep,
thank you.
exactly right. Yep. Yeah, I mean, if we wouldn't have expanded it, we would have been left with basically, San Jose Airport and surrounding lands, the water pollution control plant, and Meadow Fair Park. So we knew we had to kind of reach out and find something new.
Great.
So what's happening up at the Worms at Don Edwards National Wildlife Refuge? So that's, if you look at this map here and the stars, is this star up here. So it's up in Fremont. And a lot of you are probably familiar with the sort of San Jose side of the refuge, which is more tidal marsh and salt flat. This part of the refuge, their Warm Springs unit, which is shown here, is kind of a matrix of seasonal wetland and grassland. And they've had owls out there for, historically, over the years, the population has cycled high and low. These are some numbers that they have from the last couple of years. You can see the wetlands on the site, so they have vernal pool species out there as well and other things. But they're really interested in doing some grassland restoration on the site and finding ways to boost their burrowing owl numbers. So they've come to the Habitat Agency with a proposal that basically outlines how they will do that for the next 5 years. And a couple just kind of points on that. I mean, they've already started this work. They did the work this year for the first time and had some pretty good initial results. They started small, and their plan with some funding from the Habitat Agency would be to expand that effort. They involve a lot of volunteers in the work that they do, and essentially breaks down into just a few buckets of what will actually be happening out there. So they're already doing survey work for burrowing owls. They're going to continue that effort on an annual basis. They provide that data to the Habitat Agency as part of the coordinated effort that I mentioned. Doing lots of vegetation management, keeping the grass short for owls, that's what they like. Enhancing the prey base, so there are lots of things that can be done to increase the number of insects and other really small mammals and things like that burrowing owls eat. They're installing some rock piles and some vegetative islands, so areas where grass is a little taller, which can harbor insects and things that owls eat. And then also doing some predator control. So they have, like most places in the urban Bay Area, they have some feral cat problems, they have lots of skunk problems and some possums and stuff. And so part of it, what they'll be doing would be, they already do a lot of predator control on the refuge, and they'll just be expanding that effort on the Warm Springs site. All of those things, I think we've sort of proven that all of those things will boost the numbers of burrowing owls on the property. And that comes to the conclusion of what's happening at Warm Springs. Any questions on anything that I've talked about so far?
Nope, thank you. That concludes Troy's portion. Edmund, that was, just so we're keeping our numbers right, we have 4 items on our agenda that deal with burrowing owls. 9 and 17 are action items, but what we're dealing with right now are 3 and 16. He just finished 3. Do you have anything to add to 16?
No, Chairman.
Jones, did you have any presentation, anything you wanted to mention about 16?
No, that what I presented before his presentation was sort of covering that. Yes.
Good,
Okay.
thank you. Shawnee, why don't you come forward? Have up to 3 minutes to speak.
4 items?
And, well, no, do you want to speak to each?
There are 2 items, and so I don't know, official.
All right, 2 minutes each, you got 4 minutes. There you go.
Well, you don't need that, but hey. So I'm Shani Kleinhaus. I'm the environmental advocate for Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society. We have been monitoring boring owls in the valley for many, many years and have witnessed their decline. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we're doing right now. One thing we have is a grant, one of the LAG grants. We are sponsoring scientists to go and monitor and band and follow wintering boring owls. So that's moving forward. Another project that we're doing, and that is from HCP funds from the state, but the habitat plan was not ready to accept them when so we applied, and the project is moving forward. We're doing surveys for many years. Until now, we've financed our own sections of the survey. We'll probably come to you guys in the future to ask to continue those surveys. And we surveyed a lot of the areas that were not normally surveyed, so in Santa Clara County and at the Warm Springs unit of the National Wildlife Service. We have a wonderful partnership with the City of San Jose. Thank you, Vice Mayor Herrera. And we are monitoring the populations at the regional wastewater pollution plant, and we are also improving the habitat there. This project is amazing. A lot of people participate. A lot of people get to see the owls, and the owls are doing well. And it's the only place in the state where boring owl population is actually increasing. Everywhere else, they continue to plunge, and that's true for the rest of our county as well. So we continue to be very engaged, and we continue to be very, very worried for the future of the owls. So one of the things that I wanted to say after listening to what happens to the fees of Arcadia, Arcadia has had owls there for a very long time. There are a few more around in the hills, or at the airport, other places, Quimby area. Most of those are gone either because of development or whatever reason. Sometimes we don't know. There was a pair that raised chicks last year at the park, and they were there this year. One of them got hurt, got released after it was treated, but there were no chicks this year. And next year, after construction begins, even if construction only happens on 10 acres, it's likely that they'll abandon, which means that the entire area eventually will not be paying into the HCP, because the owls, the 10 acres, will probably be substantial enough to extirpate them from that site. They'll be gone. And when we come to development a few years from now of the rest of that land, there won't be any fees because there will be 3 years of no owls or whatever. So I think that's something that you need to look at and not just say, oh, we'll pay 10 acres for 10 acres now. We'll develop the entire site 10 years from now or whatever. It takes a long time. Meanwhile, we lose those owls forever. So that's an issue I wanted to bring up. Another one is that our surveys actually don't look, at least from the information we have, it looks like in Santa Clara County, they're not increasing. And I know we've seen that there's 51, but that includes sections of outside of this county. What we think is sometimes happens is you count an owl in Mountain View, and then you go and count the same owl over at Moffett because something happened. The owls move. They move a lot until they have chicks. Then they don't move anymore for a really little while. But they do move a lot, so we do count them more than once occasionally, and we think that the population right now is around 30 pairs in Santa Clara County, and I'm not saying anything about the other areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Shawnee. And we're dealing with 3 and 16 right now. Both recommended actions are simply to receive. Is there any other comments or questions regarding either of those items? Yes, Vice Mayor.
I just want to publicly say thank you to Shawnee Kleinhaus and Audubon for the fantastic work that's been done with the city of San Jose. And I had one question for Shawnee, and I don't know if you can answer this or if it's possible, because I'm new to burrowing owls. Is it possible, or is it a good idea, or is it even possible to have the ability to observe the burrowing owls at the water treatment plant for maybe students, or are we able to do that, or would that totally disturb them?
We can, and we have been. A lot of students from San Jose State have been involved in this project. They come in, they do volunteer work, or sometimes they just come to see. We had one family day for employees of the environmental Carrie's group, Environmental Services, and people came and had a great time. They're also skittish, and we don't want to bring a lot of people all the time. Yeah. But when people want to see, or students want to see and get involved, we do create opportunities and allow them to come. We also have a student in San Jose State who's doing now he's going to be a paid intern soon, and he's doing a project there, and we hope to attract additional students to do like graduate theses and things like that. There are a lot of really fascinating things happening there. Even the piles, just a little story, sorry. The piles of dirt that are brought out for the owls, when you look at them, each one was brought from a different place, and they bring things with them. So some of them have like mushrooms coming out of them, and some of them gophers are coming out of them, and some of them have invasive species, and some of them have native poppies. So there's a lot of things can be done there scientifically and engaged, and we're looking at ways to do that.
Yeah, well, it's a great partnership, and I know ESD's been, our Environmental Services Department has been very excited about the work that's been done, so I just want
And they're doing a fantastic job. And any one of you who wants to see them, let us know. We'll be happy to take you out there.
Great, thank you.
And your staff.
All right, so that concludes 3 and 16. Move on to item number 4, which is a report from Edmund, our executive officer.
Thank you. Just wanted to give you an update on the RGP process. The saga continues. So, we were supposed to meet with Colonel Morrow, who is the supervisor of the San Francisco district of the division that represents California and some other states. Unfortunately, he had to travel on Tuesday, so we didn't get a chance to meet with him. We're going to schedule a meeting with him in February to tell him where.
Travel here? He had to travel somewhere else?
Somewhere else.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we're hoping we can meet with him in February and express some of our concerns about the delays in processing our permit, because everything has been done. It was an administrative review back in May. So we're frustrated. I've shared that frustration with the boards in past meetings. If we don't get a satisfactory result from the colonel, a commitment to a completion date of sometime early this year, then that, yeah.
I would drop member Lazat's name. If you don't, yeah.
Yes. And then we're going to go to the general and speak to the general and say, this is not acceptable.
Yeah.
And we'll start getting electeds involved. So, and I know they will respond to pressure from local, state, and federal electeds, and that'll be our next step. And I'll coordinate that with the boards and seek advice on how to proceed.
Thank you. Please have a very short leash. I believe it, as I recall, every 2 years a different colonel is assigned.
Correct.
To the Western Regional United States. So just when you get on somebody's calendar or get somebody to know that you're a pain in the rear or that you have an issue, they leave.
Yes.
Somebody else comes in and it's retraining 101.
And this Colonel Miles is relatively new. He has an impressive resume. He's well educated, even a public policy degree. So I'm hoping we can sort of reach him and reach out to him and speed this up.
Thank you.
PSE update, I mentioned Ferguson Road and PG&E during the budget briefing. Land enrollment, the Caltrans donation, their right-of-way group, there's a 55-acre parcel on off of 152 and Pacheco Creek that's Caltrans is going to donate to us, and they're going to donate it with an endowment and also upfront management costs and possibly even funds to do restoration out there. And their right-of-way group approved it, so hopefully that'll happen this year. It may be the first parcel of the new agency, so small but still significant. Public land enrollment is continuing. The ones that are priority now are the County Park, Clara, and the OSA Park in Coyote Valley. We're collaborating with PG&E on acquiring a property in the Tulare Hill area. Hopefully, the landowner, we can reach some agreement with that landowner. I've met with our conservation partners, as I mentioned earlier, to try to discuss land acquisition collaboration. I have talked to several private landowners and hopefully be able to get one of the problems with some of the private landowners is we can only pay fair market value for the property. So sometimes their sort of expectations on what they think the property is worth is beyond our ability to negotiate with them, since fair market value, give or take a few thousand, is about the best we can do. I've made that clear to some of the landowners that's what we can do. So I'm going to reach out to Pratt & Whitney again and some of the other landowners, and hopefully that'll lead to next steps, which is hiring a realtor to kind of help us shake the trees more and try to find out if there's more landowners out there that want to sell us land that we would want to buy. And then we're going to start being more proactive with the Section 6 process, so we're going to try to line up funding partners now and get a willing landowner lined up now, because the application is due in November, but if you don't have everything lined up now, you're kind of dead in the water on that one. So that's conclusion of my executive officer report.
Thank you. I'm smiling because a half hour ago he was commenting the problem we'd be in if we had all this land offered and we didn't have the money. And now we're talking about having the money and not being able to buy the land. So it depends on what kind of a day it is. Thank you for that report. Any questions of the executive director? And no one from the public wishing to speak? Yes.
What's the minimum? Is there a minimum acre size for us to purchase land?
It kind of depends on location. It's that mantra of real estate: location, location, location.
She has a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. She's
if you mind donating it to me, my family and I will be looking for a house soon. So. But if it's land that's been classified as moderate to high priority per the reserve system design, then 5 acres or 500 acres. If it's kind of viewed as sort of that, in sort of that conservation biology sense of a large contiguous landscape, or it has value for connectivity, yes, to answer your question.
On the smallest parcel we think. I just want
So I think so, but if it's in the right place, absolutely, we'd be interested in buying it. You know, Creek Corridor, or it's a piece of a larger puzzle. Yeah.
There's some development in my district where people were bringing up the idea of wondering if Habitat Plan would be interested in it, and I could talk to you about it offline, see if that makes any sense.
super. Thank you. We now move on to items 5 and 6, which are governing board action only. So Angie, you've got a pretty good idea who's on governing and implementation only. So we're now on items 5 and 6, which are on the consent agenda. Anyone from the governing board that wishes to make a motion to accept?
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Approval is even better. And a second. Any discussion? Seeing no one from the public wishing to speak on 5 and 6, all in favor of governing board members of approving items 5 and 6, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. That passes unanimously. Nice job, Angie. All righty. We now move on to item number 7, which is a governing board action. This one, let me give a little, I'll just say it. Kat right now is the current chair of the governing board. I am the vice chair of the governing board. We spoke to Kat by phone since she was ill and not able to attend here, and asked her, was she interested in staying? And she said she would be happy to stay if nobody else wished to become the chair. I've been on enough boards, and all of you have as well, where normally the vice chair becomes the chair, normally, should the chair step down. In this case, the existing chair is willing to stay unless anyone else wishes to be the chair. And even though, Valerie, I'll do this through you, we're going a little bit out of order, on item 14 is the selection of the implementation board chair and vice chair. I'm the chair of the implementation board. It meets more often than the governing board. It's more, I'll just throw this out there. I'm desirous of staying chair of the implementation board. It meets more often, and I can make that commitment to do that. The entire habitat conservation plan, the entire thing, is in my supervisorial district, hitting a number of different cities. That's one of the reasons that I'm here. So I'm kind of tying in item 14, which is the selection of the implementation board chair and vice chair. And one more point to mention, the current vice chair of the implementation board, Brian Schmidt, is no longer on the water district and no longer here. So we will need somebody for that. Yes, and then Supervisor Simidian.
Picking up the plan being in the entire district, I
Yes.
believe it's in the entire district of the water district, so
Yes.
I would have an interest in being the vice chair.
Okay, and the vice chair of which?
Implementation.
On the implementation board. Okay, and I don't, Valerie, tell me if I get askew here. Okay. So we're on item 7, governing board.
I'm desperate to make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Please, Supervisor Simidian.
Given the value of continuity, given the fact that we've been a little slower ramping up than we thought, given the comments about the coming and going of colonels, I'd like to move that we retain the current vice chair and chair of the governing board. It's the only board I sit on, and therefore it's the only one I'm privileged to make a motion on.
Second.
Thank you. And actually, this is governing board action only, is what I'm getting there from the look from our attorney.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion on that? Anyone from the public? No? Okay, governing board members only. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously from governing board members. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for continuing on.
Thank you. And it's funny how you get assigned to things when you're not here, but Kat was open to staying on this. And she just wanted to point out if anyone wished. I've said that already, haven't I, Mayor Tate? Okay, we now move on to item number 8. Again, we are governing board actions only right now. And it is the, Edmund, this is probably you.
Yes, it's the
AB 1600 development impact fee.
So the action is to review and accept the AB 1600 development impact fee report for fiscal year 13-14. The AB 1600 or Mitigation Fee Act requires any jurisdiction imposing development fees must report the following: a brief description of the type of fee in each account or fund, the amount of the fee, the beginning and ending balance of the account or fund, and the amount of the fees collected and the interest earned. The AB 1600 revenues that we have to report on were $310,652. The non-AB 1600 revenues were $640,160. The AB report balance was a negative $394,575 after agency expenses of $705,409. The summary of agency receipts and expenses is on page 110 if you want to quickly review that. And on page 109 shows you a summary of which fees were considered AB 1600 fees and which ones weren't. And I can go in more details on any of this if you would like.
Seeing any questions? And just so it's public, any member of the public wish to speak? Next speaker card I have is item number 12. Any member of the public wish to speak on 8, 9, 10, or 11? Seeing none, you've completed your comments. Any questions? Otherwise, Valerie, we do need a motion to accept.
So move.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? Seeing none. Governing board members, all in favor say aye. Aye. That passes unanimously, Angie. Thank you. Item 9.
Item 9 is the action that was discussed at the joint meeting. It's the adoption of a resolution revising the Burrowing Owl Conservation Fee Zone map. And I have nothing more to report on that.
Thank you. Do we have a motion from a governing board member?
Motion to adopt.
Thank you.
Second.
And we have a second. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none. All governing board members in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. We go on to item number 10.
Number 10 is the fee ordinance date change, and the action requested is that the governing board introduce an ordinance amending ordinance number 2013-01 to revise the annual effective date for the imposition of updated mitigation fees on development within the geographical boundaries of the Santa Clara Valley Habitat Plan area.
Edmund, excuse me, you're introducing ordinance 2015-01?
It should be, yeah, 15, yeah.
01.
Yeah. Oh, it's amending.
Amending 1301
Yes,
by
1301.
introducing 1501.
Right.
Correct.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Nope, no problem.
Thank you. So it's introducing, yes, to revise the boundaries of the Santa Clara Valley Habitat Plan area from, so the date changing it from June 1st of each year to July 1st of each year to be more aligned with the fiscal cycle of all the agencies and co-permittees.
Thank you for that report. Valerie, this says introduce. It seems to me it's just been introduced. Is there a motion to introduce?
Well, there should be a motion technically to waive reading and introduce the ordinance.
Okay, then I'm looking for a motion to waive reading of the ordinance, introducing the ordinance.
So moved.
Thank you. Angie, a motion and a second. Tate and Herrera. Governing board, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
So this will come back for adoption the next time the governing board meets.
Understood. Thank you. 11.
11 is development fee adjustments, and the action is adopt a resolution approving the mitigation fees imposed upon new public and private development within the geographical boundaries of the plan area for fiscal year 15-16 and for the non-mitigation charges for participating special entities. So the plan calls for automatic inflation adjustment to the plan's development fees. The ordinance adopting the development fees incorporates this annual adjustment. As noted in the attached urban economics report, the three fees that fund land acquisition increased by 5.7%. Those are land cover, serpentine, and nitrogen. And the wetland and burrowing owl fees increased by 3.6% from fiscal year 15 levels. In fiscal year 14, the fees that fund land acquisitions increased by over 9%, and the other fees increased by nearly 10. So I guess the good news is they didn't go up as much. They won't be going up as much this year as they did last fiscal year.
Thank you, Edmund. And this, I don't mean to cut you off. Did you finish?
I can continue or whichever.
Thank you. The
Yes.
inflation increase that you referred to was put into the plan prior to your arriving here. And for those members that weren't here at the time when that was done, there was consensus among the board members, a unanimous consensus among the board members of tying in with inflation as compared to no raise, no raise, no raise. Hey, public, 27% increase. I'm a big fan of the steady as she goes, PG&E, San Jose Water, incremental type dealy bob. And so there's wording. Now, given that, isn't there also in the plan, Edmund, and I know you've read the whole plan, so I'll put you on the spot. Isn't there also in the plan every 5 years, 7 years, that we look at it and see where we are, even though in case there needs to be another minor adjustment?
Yes.
Okay. So for members that weren't here previously, the plan for the plan was to have annual increases based on inflation, and then every 5 years to look back and say, okay, are we keeping up with reality? And recessions and bubbles come and go in there, so that's the reason for looking back. So we don't get too far ahead or get too far behind. I think that's good management, frankly.
Thank you. Thank you for that input. So the fee increases also apply to the PSEs, as I mentioned. Indices used were the House Pricing Index and the Consumer Price Index. The development fee schedule, the new development fee schedule is attached to the resolution. It's Exhibit A. Although staff believes these fee adjustments are automatic and administrative by nature, we felt that given the newness of the agency, it would be advisable to have the governing board approve the fees by resolution.
Thank you. So that concludes your presentation. We have no speakers on 11. Governing board members looking for a motion to approve.
Move approval of the resolution.
Second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Andrew? No? Member Herrera? Oh, Andrew, do you have a question?
I'll go first. Okay.
Okay.
What is the sort of the outreach plan for the new fees once they're out? How do you distribute that information? I know it's not effective for a while, but
yes, the co-permittees had told me that it was sort of done suddenly, the 11th hour last time, per approval by the governing board. I will release these next week to all the co-permittees, so they'll be aware far in advance. The date is still June 1st, but it will effectively change to July 1st per the governing board meeting in June. So,
good, but we're putting 5 months notice out there to be very transparent. That was your question as well?
That's exactly my question. And
Yeah.
do we need to have a hearing or anything, or do they need to be able to weigh in on it, or do we just, I mean, we have the authority to do this, so.
Yes.
It's just basically notifying them.
Yes,
giving them a
and,
chance to-
and letting the all the county and the 3 cities and as well as VTA and the water district, just letting them know that this is the new fee schedule. And so next week I'll release it and it'll be posted on the webpage too.
Right.
Thank you, and I believe we had a motion and a second but did not take a vote. Is that correct? Governing board, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. Now I move on to 12. Doug, do you want to speak before or after the staff presentation? Fine, come on forward. You have 21 minutes. No, I'm kidding.
Well, you anticipated my ask. I was going to say if I had just a little more time, because this is exciting stuff, I could tell you how you can use molasses to get cows to move over and eat invasive weeds. But
oh, thank you.
You've
got
only
3
21
minutes. The clock has started. Go.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, board members and staff. For the record, my name is Doug Muirhead. I live in Morgan Hill. My questions tonight have to do with the organizations who are going to have their lands monitored by this program. Section 3A, or packet page 143, identifies the county parks and University of California as having given you permission to monitor some of their lands. I spoke to the field operations manager at the Open Space Authority yesterday at their board workshop and asked him if he had been invited to participate. He said no. So my first question is, did you talk to other organizations who chose not to participate? And the follow-on question would be, do you have any plans to invite other organizations to participate, and if so, who might they be, and when might you extend those invitations? Thank you.
Thank you. Good question.
Yes, and Troy's here. He helped prepare the grant, so Troy can weigh in also. This is a study, and the results that we, sort of the information we gather from this study, we will share that information with everybody. Troy, do you know if why these? Yeah, thank you.
Sure, yeah, thank you. So this is related to the local assistance grant we recently received to do some study, find more efficient ways to monitor grazing programs, essentially is what we're looking at. The reason we reached out specifically to University of California was because they've been on their Blue Oak property up by Joseph Grant County Park. For a number of years, they've been doing a lot of work like this on the property. So they have a pretty good baseline of existing information out there. We're hoping to sort of leverage that existing information and tie into that a little bit. So that's why we specifically reached out to them. County Parks, for a long time has been involved in grazing and been interested in grazing monitoring. They're trying to do more of that, but they are always strapped staff-wise to do that kind of monitoring. So they're really interested in the efficiencies that might be gained from this kind of work. Now, one thing to recognize is that we put those two names in the grant application, but there's certainly nothing to say that those would be, that's it. So the other thing that we'll have to balance when we get the money in hand and start doing the work is it's $85,000, and we're going to have to think about how much field work we can actually do for that budget, which is relatively small when you start putting people out on the ground. So it's probably only going to be, a couple of locations that we're monitoring. So Open Space Authority could certainly be part of that. And as efforts like this happen over time, those are the kind of organizations that we'll be reaching out to. So there's nothing to say it's just those two organizations, but we certainly will be conscious of how many sites we'll be monitoring.
Thank you, Troy. And thank you, Doug. That closes the public portion on item 12. Governing board members looking for a motion to adopt.
So moved.
We'd like a staff report first. Oh. Thank you, Mayor Tate.
So the state requires that we adopt a resolution approving the filing of the application, even though we already filed the application. So this is kind of perfunctory.
Yeah.
And also that you would grant the executive officer the authority to accept the funds and be the grant manager. The agency was awarded the grant in November of 2014. Just to let you know, we're providing a 10% cash match to this grant, and we also have administrative and services match. So there is a fiscal impact to the agency. And we also, as Troy mentioned, levering the efforts of the Nature Conservancy and cooperating landowners, which amounts to a $28,000 cash match. So the total project with the in-kind matches is $127,199.
Motion for you to accept the money.
Correct.
We have a motion. Need a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? None. All in favor on the governing board say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Take the money. Governing board members, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You are welcome. Drive carefully. Implementation board members, stay tuned. We now move on to item number 13, which is approval of the minutes.
Second.
And Valerie, Jason was not here for that either?
Chair, I will also be abstaining from...
Correct. Let me just check, because you can vote on it even though you weren't here. So let me just check with Valerie if we need your vote or not to pass this.
Yeah.
It won't pass without a unanimous vote.
If need be, I have reviewed the minutes and can enact if need to be.
Thank you. You're my favorite Jason here. This is good.
I removed my previous statement of abstaining from vote.
Thank you. Taking one for the team. All right. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, I seconded it. I think it.
Lazat and Herrera. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you again, Jason, just so we can get that done. We now move on to item 14, which we discussed before but did not vote on before. And what was discussed was Wasserman remaining as chair, Lazat as vice chair.
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you for the motion. Thank you for the second. Thank you.
Yes,
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you very much.
Confidence.
And thank you.
Thank you for stepping up.
Member Lazat, absolutely. That concludes item 14, Angie. 15 is for the implementation board to review and accept the fiscal year report. Edmund.
Yes, it's just to review and accept the budget schedule, which is attached. There's one error. For the attachments, there is no resolution. It's just the review and accept the budget schedule for fiscal year 15-16.
Without an attachment, you said?
Yeah, with an attachment. Sorry. There's listed here 2 attachments. There's only one. The budget schedule. No resolution is needed.
Okay. So we need a motion to accept. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. That passes unanimously. Item 16 was handled earlier. Angie, that was approved unanimously as well. Item 17 is an action item. Edmund, we're going back, and Troy touched on this with the Don Edwards. What do we have here? Adopt a resolution.
Yes. Yes, adopt a resolution authorizing $178,171 to be spent on to go towards a 5-year agreement between the agency and San Francisco Bay Bird Observatory to manage western burrowing owl at the Don Edwards Wildlife Reserve Warm Springs Unit. As Troy noted, the agency is undertaking a series of measures aimed at reversing the decline of burrowing owl in the South Bay region. Management agreements with outside organizations who are protecting burrowing owl nesting habitat is critical for plan success and is a key Tier 1, Tier 2 implementation strategy.
Thank you. Question, Jason, please.
Thank you. I would just like to put this out to staff for consideration that as you start this work with the agency, to have them be able to come back in front of the implementation board and also the governing board to provide us with updates as to how the management of actually those lands are going, and to be able to share with us what they're seeing as potential recommendations to be able to improve their process and what they're undertaking.
Absolutely.
Thank you, and I apologize. The Don Edwards Wildlife Refuge Warm Springs Unit was, I guess I'll ask Troy. On your map, was this outside of Santa Clara County? Yes. This was in Fremont, in Alameda County. And these are funds going to that organization outside of our county and outside of the plan. So as far as our plan, as far as budget, is this in there? I don't recall anything like
it's
this.
Part of that extended area that Troy referred to.
I understand that, but
yeah.
It's your understanding, I'll ask Valerie as well, that, well, I guess, Valerie, you'll say if we vote on the money being spent there, the money can be spent there. So, and I understand it's a wonderful thing to do, and it ties in with our mission with the burrowing owls. I just wanted to make sure this type of expenditure was in our budget, or is certainly in our current revised budget.
Yes. Yes, with the sewage treatment plant in the city and those non-participating cities that Troy alluded to, will be. I've already met with the city environmental utilities group to talk about doing a management agreement with them out at the. So yes, this was an agreement with this organization. Was envisioned within the burrowing owl strategy, and yes, there is money in the budget for it.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, just to clarify on that point, this is helping to offset potential impacts or concerns within our permitting area, right? So the development that's occurring within the plan area, within our co-permitted jurisdictions, is being addressed through this sort of to misuse the term, probably off-site mitigation.
Correct, Andrew. Yes, and basically, we're hoping by increasing the population of the birds in places like Warm Springs that they'll decide at some point in the future to set up residence in South County, and that may have. There's something called Tier 3, which I'll just give you a heads up on it. We're probably going to be in Tier 3 next year. The states wants us to be in Tier 3 now. We said before we go to Tier 3, which is like DEFCON 5 for the birds, we have to come up with a plan of attack for that. So translocation of the birds is one of the strategies envisioned in Tier 3. Burrowing owls haven't done well when they're translocated to another site, so it's something we don't take lightly. So.
Thank you. But Santa Clara County is special. People do well when they transfer here.
Yes, exactly. And we'll try to get some of the San Benito birds that come up too.
There you go. The reason I was asking fellow board members, committee members, is the report that Troy gives us, it's annual, correct? That we've contracted with. This agency is contracted to get an annual report from this consultant, this information regarding, and the Habitat Conservation Agency is paying for that annual report and research and all that you did, and I appreciate your presentation today. If another agency, another county, another city, another habitat plan, I'm just kind of looking at this as us doing work outside of our area, and then we're sending money outside of our area, and we're paying for a consultant to count burrowing owls outside of our area. I'm kind of looking for money coming from outside our area to say, thank you for the information you're giving us. And for me, I'll just pick Alameda County. If Alameda County is getting information that Troy has gathered, as you showed on your map, your stars outside of the habitat plan, that's a benefit to Alameda. Instead of us giving them $178,000, it seems they should be giving us $178,000. So I'm just trying to understand what we're doing.
Yes, and we sent letters out to all the non-participating cities, including Fremont, saying, hello, we exist, and burrowing owls. So we touched upon all the species, but we're most concerned about burrowing owls and nitrogen. Those are the two big issues that impact our plan area by activities that go outside the plan area. So we will be commenting on their CEQA documents. So if a project comes up in Fremont and we think it might impact the burrowing owls at Warm Springs, we will comment on that project, and hopefully through the CEQA process and through collaboration with the state and the environmental community, we will be able to do as you described. And I'm hoping that some of those big projects in Santa Clara, the city of Santa Clara, that we'll be able to encourage them to mitigate their burrowing owl impacts through the plan.
My suggestion, excuse me one second, Andrew, my suggestion is you meet with other people who share your responsibilities, habitat preservation throughout different cities and counties, is letting them know that we paying a consultant gathering information in their area, and if they want to help contribute to that effort, we're happy to share information.
Sure. That's a good idea. No,
Okay.
we haven't done that yet, no.
It just seems we're giving them info and money.
Yes.
So I'm not sure on this one.
Yeah. Well, and sort of along that lines, I don't know, maybe this is a question for council. Is there a potential that a project in Santa Clara or Fremont that might have had a burrowing owl impact would say that their impact is being mitigated by this work that's being done through our agency without participating, right? Without sort of contributing to that work, but just say, this work that's going on would take care of impacts of the project.
I'm sure that they can try to say that. I don't think that it counts from a CEQA standpoint unless they cough up some money.
And maybe that's something that if we're commenting on projects that we could be aware of at least as we do so.
There were a couple projects in Mountain View that were doing that making that claim with nitrogen. I've written letters to both of them saying that the plan only mitigates for plan area impacts. So if you look at nitrogen deposition, the plan area contributes to roughly 54% of the nitrogen that will drop in the habitat areas, within the plan area. It's in the mid-20s that comes from non-participating cities, and then the rest comes from China, San Francisco, wherever. So they cannot make that claim because we're only mitigating nitrogen for impact. We're only mitigating for nitrogen that we create. So they are making that claim on nitrogen. We've countered it. it's whether, I guess the question I'll pose, and this is maybe not a fair one to the implementation board, but if we want to seek legal action with some of these cities that are making these claims, that I would defer to your recommendations on that. And it's something we don't have to decide upon today,
Right.
but that would be the next step. If they continue to make that claim, at least with nitrogen. No one's made it yet with burrowing owls, but we'll find out.
Thank you, Member Herrera.
So what we're saying is these cities are making a claim that the activities we're doing mitigate their.
They're not quite that overtly. It's more covert by saying that they don't have to mitigate for nitrogen because
We're doing that, yeah, they don't have to.
yeah.
So can we, I mean, is some of our activity that we would be doing, I mean, can they pay us so that what we're doing then does mitigate, or is that appropriate? I mean, so we
Yes.
could, you know, we can be that agency that they go to so that we, you know, it works for us and it works for them.
It's happened with Apple, Intuit, JPAR, and a project in Gilroy, that warehouse project that they gave $5,000, even though they were a project that got all their permits prior to the plan existing. Or there might have been a pipeline project, the one in Gilroy.
So is there a way for us to be in at the beginning so they kind of know before this happens where they're sort of passively letting it look like we're mitigating? I mean, is there some way we
So
could
that's
create
why we sent them all a letter. We sent letters to all of the community development department heads to say, hey, we're here. This is what our purview is. We have these issues and concerns. We have these species, and particularly we're concerned about the burrowing owls and the nitrogen deposition. And you need to include us as a body that reviews CEQA documents for any projects that might impact any of those things.
And is that all we need to say in terms of what we can offer them, or do we need to do additional things that might be a little more in terms of marketing our services to them?
Well, I'm sure we can do other things to probably market our services, but we.
I'm just asking, because
Yeah, I think that's a good question, but we've realized that they didn't even know we were there.
Exactly.
So we wanted to make sure they all knew we were there.
Great.
But in the case where they put into their environmental document that our plan is mitigating the impacts, they're aware of us. We've submitted a comment letter. Did they respond in a way that you found satisfactory to the comment letter, or was there not at that point yet? Or?
We haven't gotten any direct responses on the one Mountain View. It was that Bay Area Precision Plan. Santa Clara did respond, the city of Santa Clara, in their NOP. We commented on the City of San Jose Heritage Oaks project, and they did comment. So we are. They don't. Sometimes they ignore our. It's one of the challenges with CEQA, and we're trying to stay on top of the issue. And Fremont is what just registered us on their notice. Mountain View is now sending us everything, even on tree permits. And Newark is going to be sending us stuff. I haven't gotten any other response from the other communities. I'm sure it's some probably say, who the heck are these upstarts telling us? And others are saying, okay, sure, you guys are a new player. We understand that. As CEQA leads, they can say. They can say what they said in Mountain View. Right. And then if we want to challenge that, we'd have to sue them or challenge it legally, I'm assuming.
And maybe an interim step would be to put out some sort of report card of like, here's how other jurisdictions have responded or participated or not.
I think that's a good idea.
Thank you. All very helpful. Item 17, the recommended action is to adopt the resolution. So I'll look for a motion to do so if there's no further discussion.
So moved.
Thank you. We have a motion.
Second.
I've got a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Angie from the implementation board members here today. And Valerie, we are now, or I'll say Edmund, are we adjourning to closed session? Are we relocating in another room? And we do have opportunity for public comment. So what is your plan?
Yes, we were going to relocate to another room. Yes.
Okay, so Valerie, can I take public comment here since I have the public here?
So the process should be that you would take public comment if anyone has any on the item that is scheduled for closed session. You would then go into closed session. And then you need at least the chair or somebody needs to come out of closed session and make the post-closed session announcement on the record.
Thank you. And as far as the public comment of the closed session agendized item, is there also public comment for anything not on the agenda?
It can be. Typically for a closed session, it's just on the closed session item, but you can certainly entertain other comments if you wish.
Well, I will turn to the public that's here and ask if anyone wishes to speak. Doug, I see you do. Excuse me just 1 second. Does anybody else wish to speak? No? Doug?
Before you transition to closed session, I would like to point out that you introduced the chair of the Public Advisory Committee, but before the agenda actually said that you would give him an opportunity to present a report to you, and I'm just going to ask you if you would like to give him that opportunity.
Thank you very much. It's like you're Walter's brother. All right. Let's have a report from our chair, please. Thank you.
Extremely brief.
Hold on a minute. We need to get public record.
Could you
Please
speak
grab
in the
microphone
microphone?
from Angie? Thank you, Walter.
Thank you. Walt Glines, Gilroy. I am chairman of the Citizens Advisory Committee. And at our last meeting, we did hear parts of the Burrowing Owl report, and that was the highlight of our meeting, as I'm sure that that was the highlight of your meeting today. And and that's my report.
You are my favorite report giver today. This is good. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so our implementation governing board meetings are adjourned. We are now in closed session, and we can get up and move to another room, I guess is the best thing to do, rather than clearing this room? Yes. Okay. So don't take it personal, anyone. Have a good night. Come back out here and report out on the only item.
Review?